Hey, everybody out there. It's the Christmas-themed movie retrospective show.
Yeah, we saw some weird Christmas movies. Horror movies.
Yes, I love Christmas horror movies. I really do. And I think that we did one last year. We did Christmas Chronicles last year.
Yeah.
And then we also did that really, I can't even remember the name of it, Christmas Evil or whatever it was called.
Yeah. Nothing's going to top Christmas Chronicles.
No, well, yeah, we're going to have to...
It's got Crussell, man. Fucking, if you guys haven't seen Christmas Chronicles, go see that shit right now. It's probably free on Netflix, huh?
Yeah, it's on Netflix still. Yeah. Well, at least I hope it is, because I kind of wanted to watch it.
That's my favorite Christmas movie.
Yeah. That's rocking it right to the top of the list, huh?
Right to the fucking top. That's the bone tomahawk of Christmas movies. You know what I mean? When you... Understanding Crussell and being part of the Crussell sphere and understanding Crusseltude and everything, Crussellismo. You wouldn't think that Crussell would be a good Santa Claus. Fucking no, he's the fucking best Santa Claus of all time.
He is a really good Santa Claus.
Fucking best Santa Claus of all time.
He's like gruff, but, you know, also like
he's a macho Santa Claus. He's a high testosterone like Santa Claus. And it's a good story, man. It's a good story for the whole
Also, he steals a cop car.
It's a good story. Good story for the whole family. It's got a lot of adventures in it. It's got fucking elves. It's got little kids in it. It's kind of Spielbergian in a certain way back when Spielberg was good. And, you know, it's just a good movie.
I like the little elves in it.
Yeah, so I'm going to plug Christmas Chronicles right here.
Yeah, even though we kind of...
Every year I will plug Christmas Chronicles.
We're going to watch it again on Christmas.
We're going to watch it again. We get drunk on eggnog with fucking whiskey and shit in it. And vodka, rum and eggnog. Me and Crussell. Enjoying the power of Christmas.
Yeah.
It's not the spirit of Christmas, this is Christmas power.
That's
it's
right.
Nietzschean Christmas.
That's right. Yeah. So definitely check out Christmas Chronicles on Netflix. Like I said, we reviewed it on our Christmas retrospective last year.
Yeah.
This year, what we decided to do is because, you know, every Christmas, just like Netflix does, Shudder adds like a handful of Christmas horror movies. So we decided to review the ones that they had added. Now, I should note that they also, if you guys that have Shudder, if you've ever watched Joe Bob Briggs' The Last Drive-In, he did a Christmas special this year. It was a triple feature, and he did Black Christmas, which we're going to do. He also did Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, which we're also going to do. And he also did Jack Frost, which I haven't got around to watching yet. But so he's like reviewed all of them, and I watched most of them because I love Joe Bob. You know, so he does the movie, but then like he breaks in every few minutes and like tells you like a bunch of facts about the movie, like goes off on like funny old man rambles and stuff like that, and it's very hilarious. There's also a chick on there who's, I can't remember what her name is, but she has like huge tits, and she had like a little Christmas outfit on, and I think at the end of the Silent Night Deadly Night 2, they impaled her on antlers, like not really, but just like in Silent Night, Deadly Night 1, but we'll get into that in a minute. Now, I've been wanting to do a review of Black Christmas for a really long time. This came out in 1974, Canadian horror film. There is some controversy because, not controversy exactly, but I think some people think, okay, now, if ever anybody says that Halloween from 1978, like John Carpenter's Halloween, that's not an awesome movie, but some people say like, oh, that's like the first slasher movie, and that is not the case. It's probably the slasher that kind of kicked off the slasher boom of the 1980s. I wouldn't argue that point. But one of the very early slashers was Black Christmas. Like I said, it came out in 1974. Although I would argue that probably Mario Bava's Twitch of the Death Nerve, i.e., or in other title, Bay of Blood, which came out in 1971, is probably the first movie that had like what you would recognize as slasher tropes today. Some people say, oh, Psycho, or... you know, Peeping Tom, you know, from 1960. Yeah. I can see more, I think more of a case could be made for Peeping Tom. That was kind of more like a slasher than Psycho was.
Yeah, Psycho was a thriller.
But, like I said, if you're going to say slasher, like something you would recognize as a slasher today, I would probably say Bay of Blood. Although there was some Herschel Gordon Lewis shit in the 60s too, like Blood Feast and Color Me Blood Red and shit like that was kind of...
I remember the first time I saw Psycho, I was a little kid.
Yeah.
They actually showed that on TV. Because you didn't
I think I saw it on TV.
You didn't have to edit it.
Yeah.
Because it would pass, you know, back in the 70s, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was no, that would pass.
Yeah, there's nothing like really
and they had that on.
In it.
And they had it on like, might have been like Saturday Monster Matinee, something like that.
Yeah, that's probably where I saw it as well.
And man, that blew me away.
Yeah.
Because that was as a kid, at that age, you know, I'm talking about, this is even before I saw Alien. You know, Alien was the first really good horror sci-fi movie. But the first good horror movie I ever saw on TV was Psycho.
Yeah.
Like, well written.
Oh, yeah. And it still holds up, I think.
Yeah. Because in those days, what I was used to seeing Ed Wood type horror movies. You know what I mean?
If that's all you were used to seeing, I could see how Psycho would seem like a fucking masterpiece.
So I was just used to like dumb shit. You know what I mean? A lot of walking and driving. You know what I mean? Voiceover and the old man. You know that kind of shit. You know. Stupid.
Yeah, that kind of.
If you guys know Ed Wood, you know what I'm talking about. You know, your stupid minds. You're stupid. But I was used to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then Psycho came on, and man, it was.
You're like, wow, this is
a real movie. This is a real movie. Oh shit! And then when the fucking chair turned around.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I wish that I had that I was born then, or like that I was alive then, because it came out in 1960. That was like 12 years before I was born. But I kind of wish that like by the time I saw it, that it hadn't like, you know, penetrated pop culture to such an extent that like you knew what was coming. You know what I mean? I kind of wish I had been able to like experience it firsthand.
I got that experience
because I think by the time I saw it, I'd already seen like all the scenes.
No, not me. I probably saw it when I was like 7.
Yeah,
7 or 8. And, you know, that was the first real good horror movie I saw.
Yeah.
Like a real movie.
Yeah.
The rest of it is just like kids shit. You know what I mean? It's crazy shit. Stupid. But, you know, pie plates on fire and all that kind of stuff, you know.
Good old Ed Wood.
Ed Wood type stuff. And
but yeah, so Black Christmas, it's generally considered a Canadian horror film, even though the director of it, Bob Clark, was actually an American. He was from Florida, of all places. Although he did live in Canada for a very long time, and he did make this movie in Canada. Now, when he made this movie, he had already made the cult classic, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. He had also made yet another cult classic called Death Dream, which is actually a very good movie. So this was his third movie. Now, he got the idea because it's actually from The Babysitter and the Man Upstairs, very famous urban legend, which had been going around since fucking time immemorial, probably since girls started babysitting at people's houses. So he like wanted to make kind of a movie about that. Now the original script, which I think the original name of it was something like Stop Me or something like that, and it actually wasn't supposed to be set at a sorority house. It was supposed to be about babysitters because, like I said, it was based on the urban legend, just like Halloween was based on the urban legend, just like When a Stranger Calls was based on the urban legend. But this was kind of the first one to do something with that. So when Bob Clark kind of read the screen, he liked the screenplay, but he's like, well, let's, you know, I don't really want any kids in it or any shit like that. So it's like, let's set it like college age, and we'll set it like, you know, in a sorority house, like older. So the interesting thing was that he got a really like big deal cast to be in this fucking movie. Like somebody, like the star of the movie is fucking Olivia Hussey, who at the time was like a really big star. I mean, she had just been in Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, and she was known like all over the world. And, you know, she was generally like in a lot of kind of like real highbrow type movies, and she was like a London stage actress and all this other kind of shit. They didn't think that she would want to do it because it was just, this is like a $600,000 slasher movie, pretty much. But they asked her to do it, and she accepted the part because her psychic had told her a few days before she got the script that she was going to be going to Canada, where she had never been before, and she would make a movie there that would make a lot of money. So her psychic told her, so she took the part.
Damn.
So they just thought that was really funny that like this big famous star would be in this movie.
I wonder if it made a lot of money.
Not so much.
Really, yeah.
It made quite a bit. Like it made much more than its budget back because it didn't cost that much to make. But it kind of got sort of mixed reviews at the time.
Maybe it made a lot of money according to the psychic, in terms of what the psychic was used to making.
Yeah, maybe that's what
compared to what she was used to making is a lot.
Yeah.
You know,
so it's like
quite a prophecy.
Yeah. So the fact that that Olivia Hussey had like signed on to do it, then they also got Keir Dullea, who had been in 2001: A Space Odyssey as Bowman.
Yeah.
You know, and he said, "Oh, Olivia Hussey's gonna be. Oh, this must be like a fucking high class production." So he said he would be in it too. He plays her kind of high strung boyfriend.
Yeah.
Margot Kidder is in this, and she is probably my favorite character.
There's just something about that woman.
In this fucking movie.
Slutty. Margot just came off as just slutty whenever I saw her. I just liked it. You know, it was a good thing.
Yeah, we're not saying slutty is a bad thing. We're saying slutty is a good thing.
Yeah, she was like the slutty Lois Lane. There's just something fucking, there's just something bad about her.
Well, yeah, and I like that too, because she comes across like probably she was kind of famous at this point because this was before Superman, this was before Amityville Horror. She had, however, been in Brian De Palma's Sisters, which if you guys haven't seen that, that's a really, really good movie. So go check that out. I think I saw it for free on YouTube. But her character in this, Barb, she is like the foul-mouthed drunk sorority sister who just like tells everyone to fuck off, and it's like she's giving alcohol to children. She's like, giving cops the fucking phone number of the...
I have a feeling though that's kind of the way she was though.
She does kind of come across
I have a feeling that's the way she was, and that kind of came through even in the Superman series to me. That she just came across as a bad girl, even though when you look at her in the Lois Lane role,
she's kind of supposed to be like...
She's just a New York chick. But by today's standards, even really by the standards of those days, she wasn't doing anything unusual.
No, it wasn't.
There was just something. There's an underlying tone with Margot Kidder. Porn might break out at any second. You know what I'm talking about?
And I have to tell you, in Black Christmas,
that's what it seems like.
One of my very favorite scenes in this, because like I said, she's my favorite character by far. And like all of the characters in this are really good, like and really likable and relatable and stuff. But one of my favorite scenes is when she is there with like the house mother and a couple other people, like this guy whose daughter has gone missing. And she is like completely lit. And she just starts... apropos of nothing, she just starts telling the story about these turtles fucking at the zoo. They can fuck for 3 days. And she just like goes off on this. And she says she's at the zoo like watching them, and she's like, and it was very, very boring. It's just like the fucking best, and it's so
random. It's a good movie. It's got a lot of good actors in it.
It's so random.
Good acting.
And fucking John Saxon is in this. Andrea Martin from SCTV, who, she's done like a ton of shit since then. Although, what's interesting, and I didn't know this, but the Andrea Martin part, that was actually supposed to be Gilda Radner. She was actually offered the part first, and she took it. But then, like a month later, she had to drop out because she had, some other like career obligations and couldn't do it.
When I first saw this, I could really see how Friday the 13th Part 1 in many ways was a copy of this.
And Halloween's kind of a copy of it too.
Where they're trying to set up a contrived situation like this. For this series of murders to happen. You can really, if you like Friday the 13th one and like you said, Halloween, you want to see this one too, because this is where that came from, if you ask me.
This is kind of like I said, yes, you can make an argument for the Mario Bava movie, like being, because that's very much... You would recognize a lot of later slasher tropes in that movie. I mean, even so much so that Friday the 13th 1 and 2 like directly ripped off a couple of kills from that, like the spear through the two people fucking and stuff like that. That comes right from that.
Was
Mario
Kevin
Bava.
Bacon.
I know that comes right from that Mario Bava movie. They stole it like unashamedly.
Kevin Bacon and that hottie with the big boobs with the fucking short shorts got speared right through the damn fucking bed. But then that's it. But like I said, they stole that scene. I was a teenager then, and I was just like, God damn, what a waste. You know what I mean?
Well, you can say that's that.
I was like, damn.
Why they want to mess up a perfectly good pair of titties like that?
I might only been like 13 or so, maybe 14, but I knew, I was into that shit.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
14, that's way
I still had
older.
that boom. Damn. I was easy to impress back then.
Well, I think 12, 13, 14-year-old boys the world over.
Easy to impress.
But so the thing about this, though, even though, like I said, this did a lot of things that later became tropes, like the killer POV shots, just this kind of like set in a sorority house. Although, interestingly, it's not real gory. No tits. As far as I don't think there's no nudity in it or anything like that. In a way, it's kind of like, it's like an adult slasher movie. If you know what I'm saying, because you know how like slasher movies, they usually trying to target like teenage boys and stuff like that.
Although it had a lot of the small talk and a lot of the conversations and kind of contrived conversations to fill the movie out that are entertaining, but man, that's all throughout the fucking early Friday the 13th and the early slasher movies. I remembered those conversations a lot growing up. You know what I mean? Isn't that funny? They're just these dumb little conversations, but you'd remember them for like the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Or like for a long time.
Well,
they kind of like had an impact on you.
Well, the thing
like you were there.
Yeah. Well, because the thing about this one, I mean, that happened in a lot of slasher movies, but I think the reason why it works so well in this one, because the cast is amazing. These are all like really good actors, but also none of them are annoying.
Yeah.
They all seem, to me, they all seem like real people. Even nowadays, like when they make slasher movies nowadays, I feel like everybody is like an Instagram model being in a movie, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
This was like very much just regular people. Yeah. They weren't like, oh, I'm so hot in here, look at my nipples and everything. Like, as you would if you said it in a sorority house nowadays.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just as a gratuitous kind of like, look how sexy we all are.
Yeah.
These just are they're attractive girls, but they're just regular people.
It's a 70s movie.
Yeah.
So it's just done in a 70s way. But you saw that in the early 80s too. It just didn't have a lot of the corn. It had its own kind of corniness. It did have a corny tone to it sometimes. But it's not like 90s corny.
Yeah, and it's not, and really like it has humor in it.
Yeah, it's just a different way of doing it.
But I don't find the humor particularly over the top or I don't find it particularly corny.
Well, it didn't require as much to be remembered back then. They weren't all competing to try to stand out and top one another. It was so the productions themselves and the scripts are a little bit more laid back, really.
Yeah.
And naturalistic.
Yeah, but that's a good word because this is a very like naturalistic slasher movie.
It's like something that really happened.
Yeah.
So
and another interesting thing too is that, and one thing that I think kind of contributes to, why it's so good and why it's so fondly remembered is that you never see the killer. The killer does not get a backstory. Yeah. He's a mystery. He's just been up in the attic and he's just been calling them and all this other kind of shit. Yeah. And you hear the obscene phone calls like with all this ranting and you kind of like something about Billy, which is usually what they call the killer. And, the director Bob Clark said that he had a backstory for the killer, but he didn't reveal any of it. So he just had like all this ranting.
If I were to say that this movie had a weakness, it would be that.
See, I like that.
I think well, this is before the slasher movie had totally fucking crystallized to where the killer kind of becomes condensed into some kind of, like you said, a symbol. Where with Jason, it's that mask.
Yeah.
With the guy from fucking what you call it? He's got the fucking Kirk mask on.
Yeah.
From
Halloween.
Halloween. So each franchise, the killer had a gimmick.
Yeah.
Had his own identity. This one doesn't. Like you said, he's kind of a faceless.
All you see is his eye, pretty much, and like his silhouette,
right,
and his hands.
I think it did need something though. That character needed more fleshing out. I'm just saying.
Yeah. See, I don't agree. I think it's creepier because you get a sense of the person's character because, like I said, they're obviously like have some kind of like multiple personality type disorder because they're doing all these different voices like when they call, and the shit that he says on the phone kind of like hints at a backstory and like hints at this person's craziness. But I like that they never show him. They don't really give him like a motivation other than he's just a nut, and that he's kind of up there. You never see him. And another thing too, then this is a spoiler alert if you haven't seen this movie, but the end of it, they leave the ending ambiguous because it, in a later, slasher movie, Olivia Hussey's character, Jess, would be the final girl and she would beat and they do have a little bit of that, like at the end where she kind of like fights him and stuff. But then at the end, the killer doesn't get caught.
Yeah.
Like her boyfriend, who is kind of like, they have like a little bit of a red herring where you think it might be him because he kind of goes off because, she's pregnant and she wants to get an abortion and he doesn't want her to get one. And there's like this big argument about it. And then, so she ends up like thinking that he's the killer because he comes in the house and she ends up beating him to death.
Yeah.
And then they think, oh, well, it was him all along, but the killer is really still in the house, and then they leave her in there by herself, and then that's where it ends. Like, they leave it ambiguous like that.
They left it open for a sequel.
Yeah.
There wasn't a sequel, but if there was a sequel, it would have been something like along the lines of Maniac.
Yeah.
Remember the movie Maniac?
Yeah.
Because it was a similar kind of a bad guy. Although I think Maniac did a better job of letting you know what he was like.
Yeah, well, they kind of spent a lot of time with the killer.
They spent a lot of time with the killer. I think maybe had they done a little bit, they said they planned on giving him a little bit of backstory. Had you gotten a little bit of Maniac action, I think I'd like the movie a little bit. Well,
I think the production company wanted Bob Clark to definitively show who the killer was and all this other kind of stuff, but he didn't want to do that. He wanted to leave it. And like I said, in a way, I like that better because, you know, I love slasher movies. I love the Friday the 13th movies. I love Halloween. I love all of those. But I do feel like when the focus shifts to the killer and it makes the killer like a character or like an icon, then you kind of like, it comes a point where, you know, it's like the later Friday the 13th ones. It's like you don't give a shit about the people that are in it. You just want to see them get killed. Yeah. Whereas in this one, the focus is more on the girls and what they're going through and their characters, their personalities. And so I like that better.
You're probably right.
I think to me, that makes it creepier.
Had you given him more screen time and, like, say, put a mask on him, you basically just would have had a high caliber fucking Friday the 13th.
Because here's the thing.
This could be a Friday the 13th movie. Yeah. In a way. Yeah. It could be like the Friday the 13th prequel. You could say it like that.
It could be, yeah.
You know, but I think Friday the 13th is a little more graphic. But still.
Yeah. Although not as graphic as I remembered, but like when I first saw them.
Yeah, remember when we went back and saw Friday the 13th? Yeah, you don't see that much.
Yeah, and it's like they made a big deal. Like, we got the Blu-ray. It's like, ooh, unrated. And I'm just like, okay. I remembered it being a lot gorier than it was.
Yeah, when you're a kid, you know what I mean? Suggestion is enough.
I guess so.
And seeing a little bit was enough. I remember I was watching it through my eyes doing like this. I'm looking through a little crack. Just looking through a crack in my fingers, you know?
But, this one, like I said, this one's not really, really gory or anything like that, but it's got like some really great, like, I just love the atmosphere of it. Like, just all the Christmas lights. It's all this warm light. And, you know, I love some of the, like, iconic image, like, of the dead girl that's, like, up in the attic the whole time, like, with the plastic around her, and, like, in the rocking chair, and they never find her. And, like, they keep, like, showing it, like, you know what I mean? They're looking everywhere for this girl, and she's just, like, up in the attic the whole time. And it's, like, just really creepy.
That kind of reminded me of some of that Italian stuff.
It does kind of have that look to it.
It has an Italian flair to it. You could tell that they were influenced by Italian horror movies.
Yeah, they probably were. Because a lot of the kind of the lighting and the set pieces...
horror cinema.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to call it. Call it shit cinema. Not even film. From here on out, when I'm talking good about something, I'm going to call it cinema.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Classy. Class this shit
It's
up.
classy. That's right.
Classier, yeah.
It's a film, like I said, it's a film with a capital F.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, the thing about this came out and initially, like, it was released in Canada first, like around Halloween time, but then in the US, they released it around Christmas time in 1974. But in the US, at first, when they first released it, they called it Silent Night, Evil Night, because the producers thought that if they called it Black Christmas, everyone would think it was a blaxploitation movie. Yeah. So they changed the title of it. But then when they re-released it later, they changed it to the regular name. Another thing, too, that I thought was very interesting was that, well, in a horrifying way, was that they were actually going to show this on TV under the title Stranger in the House. However, 2 weeks before it was scheduled to air, Ted Bundy broke into that sorority house and killed those 2 girls and assaulted those 2 or 3 other girls. And so after that happened, they didn't know it was Ted Bundy at the time. They found out later. But because this movie is also set in a sorority house and has a crazy person like killing people in a sorority house, they're like, hey, can we not show the movie?
There was another movie I remember. It was called When a Stranger Calls.
When a Stranger Calls, yeah. I mentioned with Carol Kane.
Yeah, I remember that one.
That was very straightforwardly based on the urban legend about, shit like that. But
I remember seeing that one. And I think that one kind of disturbed me.
I really like that movie, actually. Maybe we should review that one at some point. But I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember really liking it. I think the reason that so many movies have been made from that particular urban legend is because that's an urban legend that a lot of people can fucking relate to. I mean, you're in the house by yourself, like either you're babysitting or whatever, and like some creep keeps calling you.
Out of the 3 movies that we're talking about tonight, I actually kind of like this one the best. I think.
Well, this is easily the best one.
This is the one you actually kind of want to see as a priority. The other 2 are kind of optional, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that, I mean, this is a classic Christmas horror movie.
We probably should have done a whole review.
Yeah, but I mean, we can just like talk about
we've been talking about it for a half hour.
He's in a bad mood because
not in a bad mood.
He just came back from the eye doctor and like his eyes are still
my eyes are still dilated.
His eyes are still messed up. I think the only other thing I wanted to say about this was that another interesting thing that this does. One, this is like pretty. It seems like pretty progressive for the time because it's got Olivia Hussey's character and she's pregnant and she's like not wanting the baby and she's very matter of fact about I don't want to keep it, and her boyfriend's like flipping out about it, but she's just very calm and they don't judge her or anything like that for it, which I thought was kind of cool. Another thing that slasher movies did later that this one didn't do, because you know how the final girl is always like the most virginal one, that's kind of like the trope. That's not what happens in this one. The virgin gets off. Yeah. She's the first victim. So it's like, everybody gets killed pretty much except for Olivia Hussey, and maybe she gets killed because the ending's ambiguous. But, if this was a regular horror movie, Margot Kidder's character, would be the first one to get the axe because
she hangs in for a long time.
But she hangs in there for quite a long time. The virgin is the first one to go. She goes like in the first 10 minutes, which is something that they, did, that it's kind of like a subversion before the trope even came about,
Yeah, there's also something about this movie kind of reminds me a little bit like a damn who's the Canadian director?
David Cronenberg.
Yeah, almost kind of like a.
Well, this has a lot of actors.
There's a lot of Cronenbergian.
The guy that plays
feel to this.
the virgin girls.
Higher quality though, I would say. Just kind of say, not I like Cronenberg, especially the later stuff, and it got better. Some of the early Cronenberg it looked kind of low quality, but. This is like very high quality Cronenberg, with an Italian flair to it.
This is actually a nice looking movie.
Yeah.
And they did a lot of shit in this movie. Like I said, the killer POV cam, they weren't the first movie to do it, but it was one of the first, few to do it. And they didn't have Steadicam. So what they had to do, like the guy who was like the cameraman, he had to like build a rig so he would have the camera like on his head. Yeah. Like it was mounted on his head and he could like do it like that. So he could, because there's a shot where the killer's like climbing up the outside of the sorority house and stuff.
You know what else this kind of reminds me of?
What's
just
that?
Like tonally and the way it's shot and the quality and everything was kind of like The Hand. So it was a little bit kind of like that was Oliver Stone did The Hand, wasn't it?
I think that was one of his very early films, yeah.
It's a high quality movie. It was in the genre of a real good director of the times. Yeah. Not a cheap movie.
And the thing I mean, like I said, this was made for maybe $600,000, $620,000.
Did a good job.
Bob Clark had, like I said, he'd made 2 movies before this, which are kind of like cult classics. He kind of was all over the map. Like he made the very famous A Christmas Story, you should your eye out. He also made Porky's, which I think was his most financially successful movie. And then he also made like some shitty ones too. Like he made Rhinestone. You remember that movie with fucking Sly and fucking wasn't Dolly Parton in that?
I think so.
Yeah, he made that movie.
That was a cash grab flick.
It was, yeah. So he kind of had like a very bizarre career.
I actually think Rhinestone made money.
It probably
for the time. That was. I remember when that came out. A lot of women wanted to go see that one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's because of the cast. Because of the cast, and that was really cool at the time. But I'm gonna go ahead and give a shout out to The Hand again. If you guys haven't seen The Hand with Michael Caine, go watch that fucker.
Yeah,
God
I think.
Damn that motherfucker! Goddamn Michael Caine.
That movie scared the crap out of me.
He looks at you.
I know.
He looks at you. He looks at the camera, and then he looks at you, and then he looks at the camera, and then he looks at you, and then he looks at you again, and then he looks over there, and then he looks over there, and that dude is like a couple drinks away of fucking slapping the shit out of you.
Well, yeah.
People talk about toxic masculinity and shit on YouTube. Talk about they don't know what fucking toxic masculinity is. Go watch The Hand.
That's some toxic.
That's toxic masculinity right there, bro. The fucking Hand, and The Hand had some paranormal elements to it. Imagine toxic masculinity with the paranormal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paranormal
toxic masculinity. Get your ass with the fucking powers of the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to mention.
Putting that hand down on you. It's like the pimp hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except just the
Except
hand.
it's on its aunt's own.
It's doing its
The
own
hand
shit.
of psychic abilities. All kinds of fucking weird shit. Dark psychic ability.
Another thing I wanted to mention about Black Christmas that I forgot to mention is that Barb, Margot Kidder's character, is not the only drunk in this movie. There's also the house mother, Mrs. Mack, who was, I guess she was supposed to be like a vaudevillian dancer like back in the old days, but now she's like an old lady. And she has like little bottles of sherry like stashed all over the place. She's just like constantly sloshed, and she is delightful.
It's generational.
I love her.
Generational alcohol abuse.
I know. It's like everyone's
They had the old school shit that they hit it, and then the newfangled shit where they just walk around fucking, without a bra and just right in your face fucking drinking.
Talking about turtle fucking.
Talk about turtle fucking. Don't fuck a turtle.
Well, it was turtles fucking each other. It was fine.
Yeah.
It wasn't interspecies.
It's
anything.
no challenge. They can't run.
That's true. When you put it that way. But yeah, one last thing I was going to say about Bob Clark, and this is kind of sad. I actually didn't know this until I was watching the Joe Bob version of Black Christmas that's on Shudder. Actually, Bob Clark and his 21-year-old son were killed in a car accident. They were hit by a drunk driver, like a few years ago.
Wow.
Isn't that shitty?
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know that until I was watching Joe Bob, and I'm like, gee, thanks, Joe Bob, for cheering me up for Christmas. Talking about Black Christmas. But yeah, if you haven't seen 1974's Black Christmas, like I said, you will recognize so many slasher tropes that came about later. You can see where John Carpenter got inspired to do Halloween, because this is kind of like similar. There's even like an urban legend, I don't think this is true, but that John Carpenter got the idea to do Halloween when he was talking to Bob Clark about what a sequel to Black Christmas would be like.
Yeah.
Which you can see how that would happen, because like I said, the movie's themes are very similar. But I'm not sure if that's entirely the case or not, because Bob Clark liked to talk shit up a little bit. All right, so like we said, of the three we're talking about, that's easily the best one. It's a classic. Everybody should see it. Now, the second one we're watching, this has a very interesting history, and I was kind of like reading about this.
Which one are we talking
This is
about?
called Dial Code Santa Claus, or in the original French, 3615 Code Père Noël.
Yeah, this one here, man.
This is a very strange movie. This it also goes by a bunch of other names: Deadly Games, Game Over, Hide and Freak. This came out in 1989.
Do you know what this reminds me of, though?
What?
Okay. This is kind of like the French Christmas version of Extro. It kind of, there's something about how wacky and fucking far out Extro is. It kind of reminds me of that. This is definitely a kind of movie where you have a limited budget, but they're trying to do as much as they possibly can with that budget.
Yeah.
It's not a poorly executed movie. It's pretty well done, but you could tell that it's trying to do more than it can kind of afford to do. But tonally it works. It's not a real super serious movie. It's very much kind of like a 80s horror comedy adventure kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So you can really cut it a lot of slack, because it's not supposed to be realism.
I will note that this movie came out in 1989. Now, it didn't get, it got a fairly large release in France. However, it did pretty well, I think, but then it kind of slipped between the cracks, it kind of got lost. What ended up happening with this, because the premise of this movie is very, very similar to Home Alone. However, this finished shooting 2 years before Home Alone came out. And in fact, the director of this, René Manzor, was actually going to sue the makers of Home Alone, because he said this is like a ripoff of his movie, which if you watch it...
It might be.
It kind of is. I mean, it's pretty much a similar... Yes, it's Christmas themed, but other than that, it's pretty much the same premise.
Although, it would also be it'd also be kind of simple to fall into that premise accidentally too.
That's true. It could be just a coincidence.
It might be. I don't know how his lawsuit went.
But the thing about, I don't think he ever did that. But the thing about it was, after Home Alone came out and was such a huge hit, so this movie never got released in the U.S. because everybody said, everyone would just think it was a Home Alone ripoff, even though it came out first in France. So this is basically about...
Hollywood dudes did rip shit off.
That's what I mean. It's I'm not accusing anyone of ripping anything, and maybe it was just a coincidence. but the story is very, very similar.
A lot of stories have been told, so it's real easy to accidentally tell the same story as somebody else. I mean, Hollywood's running out of ideas. Some movies are just like some of these 80s movies. Actually, you can go back and there were movies in the 20s and 30s that were real similar to that.
Yeah.
Whether or not they actually went back and saw that old movie and decided to remake it, maybe not.
Well, and so what happens too sometimes, and I've had this happen to me also, is that sometimes you'll see a movie or read a book like a long time ago, like when you were a kid, and then like 20 years later, you'll think of a story idea or something like that.
And you used
and then you use that without realizing
right,
that you were just like remembering something that you saw a long time ago. I've had that happen before too. Because like sometimes I've written a story and then like I see some movie and someone's like, oh, maybe I saw that. And that's where I got the idea from. It's like, I don't know. But yeah, so the premise of this movie is there's this little boy named Thomas. And I guess his dad is dead. So he lives with his mom, Julie, who is like super, super rich. I guess she like owns a department store, I think it's called Printemps. And so she is like kind of a workaholic type of thing. So he lives in this humongous like mansion, like a big fairy tale mansion with his mom and his grandpa and his dog. And he's super into like action movies. So like the first part of the movie is like this little kid like oiling up and like putting this Rambo shit on his face and like the fucking, and he goes like through this big huge house like with his dog with his, you know, pretend like bow and arrow, like it's like pretending it's like the fucking like jungle and shit. And he's got like traps like made all over the house and everything. So it turns out that on Christmas Eve, his workaholic mom, I mean, she's not like portrayed as negatively or anything, but it's like she's not home on Christmas Eve because she's working at the department store. And what ends up happening is this kid, he's supposed to be, I think he's 9 or 10, and he still believes in Santa Claus. So he starts talking to what he thinks is the real Santa Claus over, I guess in Canada and in a couple of U.S. states, they had this too. It was called Minitel. It's almost kind of like a proto-internet type of thing. It was kind of like CompuServe came about later on, but it's a similar thing where you could like talk to businesses and like talk to other people like online, and they were like little, it was like almost like little ATM machines and shit like that, like in malls and whatnot. So he starts talking to someone that he thinks is the real Santa Claus over this Minitel thing, but it turns out that it's this psychopath who has just been fired as a Santa by his mom from the, you know, from the department store for slapping a kid because the kid said, you're not the real Santa Claus. And he was like, pow. And then like he got fired. So he decides that he's going to go to this fucking house where the kid is there with his like feeble old grandpa who's like half blind and everything. And he's going to go there and like murder the fuck out of everybody. So he goes to this place. He dresses up as Santa. He goes to this huge house and he kills like the groundskeeper, the people that are like look after the house, you know, they like live outside that. He kills the dog, and I was like in a very shocking scene. Like, you know what I mean? Because like Thomas is like underneath and he sees, and he thinks this is a real Santa the whole time. He thinks Santa is mad at him because he was going to stay up to see him. Because he's like set up all these cameras around the house and shit. Kind of like in Christmas Chronicles, actually, now I'm thinking about it. And so he thinks, so the whole time that all of this mayhem is going on, he thinks that real Santa is mad at him because so Santa like stabs the fucking dog like right in front. And I was like, holy crap, man. That's like, that like freaked me out. And so then pretty much the whole rest of the movie is kind of a cat and mouse in this big huge house of like this little kid like trying to like do traps and stuff just like in Home Alone and trying to like protect his grandpa from this murderous
and
Santa.
In that way it's kind of an action movie, but most of it's indoors.
It's set in like this big huge house and It's just really interesting to me. So, like I said, this movie had been lost for such a really long time, and then they found it. And I guess it had, like, some fans, as, like, pretty much every obscure movie does. And the fans kind of got together with this production company, and they did a restoration of the movie. And then last year, like, last Christmas, it made the rounds of, like, Alamo Drafthouse and stuff like that as, like, you know, a lost cult classic Christmas movie. And Shudder just got it like a few weeks ago. So like I said, it's a really interesting kind of time capsule of that, you know, of that time. And it's interesting how it came out before Home Alone, and yet it's not exactly like Home Alone, but in the sense that here's a kid who's doing all these traps and stuff and trying to catch.
The tone is a lot different.
It is,
than Home Alone. It's more like a horror movie.
It's less funny.
Yeah, and it has kind of, it's like a zany horror movie in a way, in the same way that, to me, Extra. Remember Extra? That always kind of had like it's like a zany extraterrestrial horror movie. Yeah. About aliens.
That's a fucking weird ass movie. We need to review that one of these days.
Yeah, you gotta
we keep talking about it. Like
I haven't seen Extra in so long.
We saw it a few years ago because remember I had never seen it and you recommended it, and I think we saw it on. I think it was free on YouTube.
Yeah.
It might still be. So we should actually probably, because I think that's one that a lot of people haven't seen. Yeah. And that is a bizarre ass movie. I wrote like a big long thing about it for my blog a couple years ago, like when we saw it. But yeah, so if you have Shudder, check out this movie. Like I said, it goes under a lot of titles. I think on Shudder they have it under Deadly Games or Dial Code Santa Claus or whatever it is. But you know what I mean. If you just like do a search for it, you'll find it. It was actually like much better than I was expecting.
It's not bad.
The guy that plays Santa is actually super creepy. So he does like a really good job. All right. So the last movie that we're going to talk about on this Christmas retrospective is the infamous Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2.
Yeah.
The reason
this is a real stinker.
But it's definitely so bad it's good.
Yeah, you can drink and watch the movie.
It's hilarious. Yeah. And here's, now, what a lot of people might or might not know, I'm not really sure.
Okay, go ahead.
But the scene where the main actor that's in it, Eric Freeman,
yeah.
who really kind of elevates this to, shitty with 2 Ds.
Yeah.
Like I said, so bad it's good territory. Because he just
fun with this fucking movie.
They overplayed the shit out of it. Yeah. And I think that if he hadn't done that, this probably would have been forgotten.
Oh, you couldn't do this movie at a serious tone in the way, these are people with film equipment and film experience making a fucking crazy ass movie. They know it's fucking crazy.
Yeah,
and they're going over the top to add to the craziness.
There's an interesting story behind this one as well.
So that's how they played their cards correctly.
Yeah.
And they try to just pack as much entertaining shit as possibly can in every second of this fucking movie. Now the movie's a fucking stinker, okay, either way. But the main thing that that's not fair. Because you know what makes a movie a real stinker is just boredom.
Yeah.
There's nothing boring about the movie.
Oh no.
Nothing boring about the movie.
This is wildly entertaining.
Yeah. It's not fucking technically sophisticated. It's not fucking high tech. It's not, I guess you could say it's not even really well written, but it doesn't have to be, because that's not what they're going for. It's just, imagine your friends get some cameras and they just make the fucking craziest movies that they can with real people out in public. Yeah. You can tell they're doing this shit out in public, like in front of the street, out in the street with their own cars.
Yeah.
So it seems like.
Well, what ended up happening with this? Okay, and like I said, I think this has kind of become a cult classic. Maybe even, for people that don't know what movie it's from, because the one very famous scene with Eric Freeman's character, whose name is Ricky, where he's like just shooting random people in the street and he goes, "Garbage day," and then he shoots at. That's a meme, and that's like a really famous meme. Like even people that don't even know what movie that it's from have passed that meme around. So that dude is famous because of that alone. Now, what ended up happening with this movie? The first Silent Night, Deadly Night was actually kind of a surprise hit. But what ended up happening with it was that it came out the same day as A Nightmare on Elm Street. Okay? Now, for a while, like the first weekend that it came out, I believe it was outdoing Nightmare on Elm Street. Like it was making more money. So it was getting like all this kind of feed, but like a lot of people were really into it. And then after 2 weeks, for some reason, they decided to pull it because people were getting offended because it's like, a Christmas movie. It's like Santa going around like axing people to death and like murder spree. And people were like offended. So they started pulling it from theaters. So apparently the producers were mad, and they thought, well, we could have made more money. I mean, it made money like on video and shit like that. So what ended up happening was that the production company in 1987 said, okay, well, we're going to make a sequel to this. And they were still kind of mad that they had lost some revenue because they got pulled from the theaters.
Yeah, this is
so they told the editor, he wasn't even a movie director. He never directed a movie before. He was an editor. And he said, take the first movie and re-edit it into a new movie, and we will call it a sequel.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to do it for nothing.
Yeah.
Okay? Now,
I guess they figured nobody had really seen it.
But yeah, I guess they figured that.
Yeah.
So the guy, he like kind of tries to, he's like, look, this is just not going to work out, you guys.
Yeah.
So he's like, can you please just give us, I've heard either give us $100,000 or $250,000, something like that, and give us like a week or 10 days so we can at least shoot some new footage.
Yeah.
And then put it in with the old one.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was they shot about 45, 50 minutes of new footage and then took 40 minutes of footage from the first movie
put it in there.
and put it in there like as a flashback. So the whole first movie about Billy like and the convent and the Mother Superior and him becoming a Santa and killing all those people, most of that is in there, including the very famous Linnea Quigley scene where she gets stabbed through the tits, like with the antlers and everything, which again, that's a very famous iconic scene.
She gives off a really fucking awesome ass shot too.
I think she did that in pretty much all of her movies.
Awesome ass shot, and then
I actually, many years ago, I went to...
stacked, man. She was looking good.
Many years ago, I went to a horror convention and I met her, like Linnea Quigley, and she's an awesome chick. Yeah. She looked like almost exactly the same, even though she was like much older. But yeah,
she knew how to work it.
She did, yeah.
Working what her mama gave her.
So I will say, I'm not saying that you shouldn't see, like if you're going to watch Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, you don't necessarily have to have seen the first one because all the best shit from the first one is in the second one too. Yeah. So what they're doing is they're kind of like the framing story with the new guy, Eric Freeman, who just like overacts the shit out of it in such a wonderful way. And he just goes around like making the best fucking grimacy faces and all this. It's just, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Yeah. And so the frame story is that he is apparently followed in his murderous brother Billy's footsteps. And he has also kind of gone off. This is kind of less a Christmas movie because he doesn't really get into a Santa suit until almost the end. But so he's telling his story. He tells Billy's story first to this psychiatrist because he's apparently in a mental hospital or whatever. So the first 40 minutes is, retelling the first movie, like they're showing scenes from that. And then the second half is like him telling about his murder spree because apparently he was fucked up by the Mother Superior and all that other kind of shit as well. And they both have this thing where, because Santa shot their dad and like then tried to rape their mom and then, cut her throat. So now they're triggered by anything having to do with like Santa Claus or anything like that. Now the hilarious thing about this is that, so Ricky, when he was a kid, they explained it's like, well, he had like Christmas trauma. So the nuns at the Catholic orphanage where he was, they said, well, let's adopt him out to a Jewish family and then he won't have to like deal with Christmas anymore. Damn. And it was just like this funny ass shit. But of course, Christmas is ubiquitous and you can't kind of get away with it. Can't escape
Christmas in the United States. Really.
But yeah, so then it kind of just like goes into his fucking
that's weird.
Murder spree.
That's kind of weird how they just said, let's take the first movie and re-edit it.
Why did they think that was going to work? It's like... It's like, yes, you can do different things. Like, it would be different if there was, like, a shit ton of, like, footage they hadn't used. But
Troll 2 skipped the whole process of the first movie. There was no Troll 1. They just said, Troll 2.
Yeah. Well, that was something that a lot of...
maybe there might have been an advantage to just calling it Troll 2 as opposed to Troll 1. Some kind of statistical thing they were going for?
Well, because wasn't the guy that made that was Italian, right?
Yeah.
That was something that a lot of Italian kind of like those cheap jack filmmakers used to do. They would make a movie and then they would say that it was a sequel to some like big American movie.
But
even though it didn't have anything to do with that.
Yeah.
So I think
that movie didn't exist. Sometimes. Right. Like there was no Troll.
I mean, there have been movies called Troll, but not anything to do with...
Not anything to do with that.
With that movie.
You just come up with Troll 2. That's the name of my movie. Well, what was Troll 2? How well did you do with Troll 1? There was no Troll 1.
Yeah.
Just Troll 2. What kind of shit is that, man?
Maybe it's Troll squared. It's
like
that's
your
how many
shit is
trolls
so
there
bad that your shit is so bad that to give it any kind of credibility, you have to claim it was a sequel to another movie.
Yeah.
It's like you're pulling something out of nothing. And you're admitting that you're pulling something out of nothing in a certain way.
Yeah.
Or claiming that you're not pulling something out of nothing. Like, this movie isn't coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
There was a part 1. Like... That's a weird way of looking at it.
You could say that, there was a part 1 and then it got lost. Like it's a lost movie.
Then why would you publicly sell it as a part 2?
See, there's no, you're trying to inject logic into something that's not
about
logical.
like trying to, let's take our old movie and we'll re-edit it into another movie.
No one will notice.
They'll never know. Yeah. That was some dumb shit.
It's like, well, the thing about it is that, like I said, it was like a cheap jack kind of move, but this movie is terrible, but it's also like a lot of fun. And I think most of it is a lot of fun because of Eric Freeman's character. Do you know that after this movie came out, he actually kind of went into hiding? And when that garbage day meme, like, went crazy, like, on the internet and shit, like, there was, like, this big thing where, like, people were trying to find him because they couldn't find out where he gone. They were, like, looking for him, you know what I mean? Because they thought that he had gone into hiding because the movie was so bad. They finally did, like, find him, and he was talking about, and he said, well, here's the thing. He's like, we only had a couple days to shoot this. They shot it on location, you know what I mean? And he's like, they didn't really know what they were going for. It was, they didn't have a lot of money. And he had only been in, I don't even know if he was in any movies before this. Like, he didn't have a lot of acting experience. He's like, the first time that he did that garbage day line, he's like, I actually did it real deadpan, like Clint Eastwood or something like that. But he's like, from the sidelines, like the producers and stuff were just went, crazier. So they kept like telling him to be crazier and crazier. So when you see the movie now, he's just like completely over the top. And it's like just these he just makes these great like fucking frowny ass faces. I saw some other reviewer like call him Grumpy Cat. Like he does have like a Grumpy Cat kind of face in this. But it's just like, oh, it's so fucking funny. And it's like some of the kills in this are great. Like this one fucking dude, he comes out, like before he's even Santa Claus, he's just like working in a kitchen or something. And he comes out to this alley and there's some guy that's like trying to, collect some money from this other like small time hood or something like that. And he gets mad because anytime he sees like somebody bullying somebody or somebody like sexually assaulting somebody, it like triggers him because that happened to him when he was a kid or his parents. And so he's always like naughty. And then like he'll go after you. So he takes this like small time hoodlum, stabs him through the gut with an umbrella, like all the way through, and then opens the umbrella up. Yeah. And then like the body falls like in this bloody umbrella sitting there that starts to rain. It's like just a fucking ridiculous. It's so fucking great. And it's just like, and there's a scene in the movie theater that's great. It's like he kills like his girlfriend's like ex-boyfriend by like he's like fixing his car and he's being a douche or whatever, and then he just like takes the fucking jumper cables and like puts them in his mouth and like blows his fucking eyeballs out. It's just like it's super super fun. And like I said, Eric Freeman, if you're out there, it's like he made this fucking movie. Just, you know what I mean? It's like the poor guy, he probably will never live this shit down. But it's hilarious. It's like, it's hilarious. And I feel like there's really something to be said. And, it's kind of the same thing that happened with Troll 2, where it's like, obviously, it's a terrible, shitty movie. Yeah. But not really, because it's still really entertaining. And this one is, too.
They have cult followings for Troll 2. I've never seen Troll 2.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
It's
I can't find it.
If
anybody wants to send us a copy of Troll 2, send it to us.
It's almost like it's such a weird movie to me because it's like, did aliens make this? I mean, you know what I mean? And I sometimes I see movies like that and I'm just like, what? A human did not make this movie. How did a human make this movie? Like some of the lines.
The guy who starred in it's very proud of that movie.
I guess. Like some of the lines in this movie, I'm like, what the? It's like, who the fuck?
A lot of the cast is very old now. They don't make movies anymore. They're just living on welfare
Well, that one woman that was in it was like, she went mental. The main guy that's in it, who was like, wasn't he like a dentist?
He's a dentist. Yeah, he's making money.
And when we watched
still quoting Troll 2 lines.
When we watched the documentary about it, which is called Best Worst Movie, which is a really good documentary, and at first I kind of liked him, even though he's kind of like one of those, aw shucks type of dudes.
Yeah, he's kind of a Bible thumper type guy.
Yeah, but like the more that it went on, especially when he started going to the horror conventions, and he started like shitting on all the like horror fans, like look at all these weirdos and all that other stuff. And I was like, oh, he's that type of dude.
He's like, what kind of place is this?
Yeah, then I kind of...
Oh, these people are weird, man. Oh.
Yeah, it's like, I'm like, what fucking rock have you been living under, man?
Yeah, because people are just wearing like, dressed up like Cenobites or whatever, just the fans.
Just like a regular horror convention.
He's like, whoa. Oh
yeah, he was all like, oh my God, what century did you walk out of, son?
Yeah. He's a Mormon, I think, isn't he?
He might be.
I think he's a Mormon.
He just seemed, he seemed very, very sheltered.
sheltered and judgmental. I'm doing, dude, you're at the horror con trying to sell you shit. And then he's talking to the people next to him, the booths next to him. I was in Troll 2. You know Troll 2? You don't know Troll 2? And they're like going, no.
They're like,
and it might be like Sid Haig.
Yeah.
Or something. They go, no.
Something probably wasn't.
Fuck are you?
It's like
You know?
somebody like that.
Fuck are you?
It's
Get
like,
the fuck out of here.
Get out of my face. Yeah, he was like super obnoxious.
Yeah.
Like I said, he seemed likable at the beginning, but the longer the documentary went on,
Yeah,
like the
no,
less
no.
likable he was.
No, he wasn't likable.
Yeah, but the thing about
very,
that,
very uncool.
yeah, and it's like
Very uncool.
and not like even embarrassed about that. Like
No.
he was just not embarrassed about
Preachy.
going around. He was just like that. Like he was really judgy, and I hate people like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, so definitely check out Silent Night, Deadly Night 2. Like I said, it's an infamous sequel for a reason. Yes, it uses 40 minutes of footage from the first one, so you can like pretty much skip.
Yeah,
through
don't
that
worry
if you
about
want.
the first. I've never seen the
But
first one. I saw the second one.
I saw the first one a long time
drinking,
ago.
I was just going. You have a good time. You just
That's
laugh
why,
at it.
like, when I saw the Linnea Quigley scene, I was like, wait, that was in the first one. And then when I looked it up, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why.
It's kind of like, if you ever want to see one of those old fucking ninja movies that were made with a fucking shoestring budget. They're fucking funny. They're not good movies, but they're fucking funny. Ninja and karate movies and martial arts. It's like that.
They did that a lot with those kind of movies too, like where
Yeah.
they just like recut, they stole scenes from other movies and threw them in there.
Right.
And yeah, it continuity. What's that?
They're like, fuck continuity. They're just looking.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
They're just looking at stuff. Go ahead, show them something.
Just to flash a bunch of images.
Yeah,
They're idiots. They
Let them
won't
see
know.
some shit.
Yeah. Oh, I have to mention too, is like, because this was driving me crazy the whole time I was watching Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, and I think these were all scenes from the first movie. The woman that plays the Mother Superior in the first movie, because they had to get a different actress for the second one. In the first movie, the whole time I was watching, I was like, God damn it, where have I seen that woman? I was like, I've seen that actress somewhere, and I said I've seen her in something that I've seen a bunch of times because I kept recognizing her voice and her face and everything. I'm like, who the fuck is that? And so I looked her up, and she was in a shit ton of stuff. She was like a stage actress in all these movies. I didn't recognize any of the movies, though. I'm like, it's like I saw those, but only once, and I don't really remember it. You know where I remembered her from? Fucking Bloodlust, which was on MST. That's why. It's because the dude from fucking Leave It to Beaver was in it. Not Leave It to Beaver, but...
That was an old black and white movie, right?
Yeah, it was old black and white. It was like
Yeah.
The Most Dangerous Game, where
Yeah.
it's like those teenagers and they land on the island and like the guy starts hunting them.
Yeah.
So I've seen that MST3K episode like probably a million times. So the guy or the woman that plays the murderous guy's wife or girlfriend or whatever she is, that's the same actress that played the Mother Superior. And I was like, that's why she's fucking familiar, because she was in fucking Bloodlust.
All right.
So it drove me crazy until I looked at her fucking IMDb page. I'm like, who the fuck is this woman? Well, like I said, she had like a huge fucking career. All right. So we've gone on and on about our 3 Christmas movies. Hope you guys enjoyed this Christmas retrospective triple feature. Like I said, all of these are on Shudder at the moment, and 2 of them are also on Joe Bob's Last Drive-In, which just shows the movie, but then he comes in with like facts and fun things about the movie and like all kind of little Christmas shenanigans, so you might want to go check that out. He did Jack Frost as well, but we didn't have time to review that one, so maybe we'll do that one next year. But yeah, so have a happy holiday, you guys, and we will see you next time. Bye.